You're 19, mopping the floor of a reactor building in a dosimeter badge and a Tyvek suit, making $14.50 an hour, wondering why the guy walking past you just smiled at his pay stub. 14 years later, you sit in a control room chair that hasn't moved in 30 years, your hand resting on a console that could power 900,000 homes, and your W-2 reads $189,400. Between those two moments sits the most scrutinized, most licensed, most quietly well-paid blue-collar job in America, and almost nobody outside the fence line knows it exists. The United States runs 93 commercial nuclear reactors across 54 power plants. They generate about 20% of all American electricity. The average reactor has operated for over 40 years. The workforce running them is aging out faster than it can be replaced. The NRC projects a shortfall of thousands of licensed operators in the next decade. The industry is not shrinking. The people who know how to run it are. If you like breakdowns of how careers actually progress, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. You're 19. You don't know what's inside yet. You just know the plant is the biggest employer in the county, that the guys who work there drive trucks that are paid off, and that your uncle said if you can pass the background check, get in any way you can. You apply for a general labor position through a staffing contractor. The application asks about foreign travel, financial history, and whether you've ever been involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility. You answer honestly on all three. 3 weeks later, a letter arrives. You pass the preliminary background screen. The full background investigation takes 87 days. An investigator calls your high school wrestling coach. He calls your ex-girlfriend's mother. He visits the apartment you lived in for 4 months in 2021 and talks to the landlord. The NRC's 10 CFR Part 73 requires a criminal history check, a psychological assessment, a drug and alcohol evaluation, and a credit review. You pass all of them. Your badge is blue. Blue means escorted. You cannot go anywhere alone. A permanent employee walks you through every door. The reactor building smells like machine oil and recycled air and something metallic you can't name. The dosimeter on your chest measures your radiation exposure in milliseconds. The federal annual limit for a radiation worker is 5,000 millirems. You absorb 80 your first month. The guy mopping next to you has been here 11 years and has never hit 500 in a single year. You mop. You carry equipment. You hold doors. You make $14.50 an hour and sign a timesheet that gets audited. You watch the licensed operators walk past in their khakis and their clipboards, and you ask one of them how he got the license. He says study. You ask how long. He says longer than you think. You're 21. The plant hires you direct. Non-licensed operator, NLO, $28.40 an hour, union scale plus shift differential for nights, weekends, and holidays. Your annual total in year 1 is $61,000 before overtime. The job is physical. You operate pumps, valves, and cooling systems by hand. You walk down equipment on rounds every 2 hours and record what you see on a paper log that gets scanned and stored for 40 years. You isolate systems for maintenance by closing valves in a sequence written on a procedure that has been reviewed, approved, revised, and reapproved by people whose names you will never know. The procedure has 47 steps. You initial each one. If you skip a step, you stop, back up, and start the sequence over. There is no shortcut. The culture has a name for it: procedure compliance. It is not optional and it is not negotiable. In 1979, a reactor at 3 Mile Island partially melted down. The NRC's post-accident investigation identified procedure non-compliance as a root cause. The industry rewrote its entire training culture after that. The procedure you're holding is a descendant of that rewrite. You work rotating shifts, 12 hours on, 12 hours off, days and nights, on a schedule that cycles every 6 weeks. Your body never fully adjusts. You miss your sister's wedding rehearsal dinner because you're covering a call-out on Unit 2. You send flowers. She understands. She doesn't entirely. A senior NLO named Garrett trains you on the turbine building rounds. He's 51. He started as a janitor. He's been doing rounds in this building for 22 years and can diagnose a failing bearing by the sound it makes through the floor. He shows you how to read a pump's vibration signature with your hand on the casing. He tells you the plant talks. You just have to learn its language. You start learning its language. The license exam application sits on your kitchen table for 3 months before you fill it out. You're 24. The plant selects you for license training. This is not automatic. The screening includes a plant knowledge interview, a reading comprehension test, and a math evaluation. You score in the top third of applicants. 14 people start the program with you. The NRC license for a reactor operator, the RO, is the most demanding occupational license issued by the federal government. The NRC says so directly in its documentation. The training program runs 18 to 24 months. You study 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, on salary, without touching the control room. The first 6 months are systems training. Every major system in the plant, how it works, why it exists, what fails first when it doesn't, the reactor coolant system, the emergency core cooling system, the auxiliary feedwater system, the containment spray system. You diagram them from memory on blank paper until the diagrams come out the same every time. The next phase is the simulator, a full-scale replica of your control room, built panel for panel, switch for switch, in a building behind the training center. The simulator can recreate any accident in the plant's history and several that haven't happened yet. Your instructors insert malfunctions without warning. A feedwater pump trips at 0300. A pressurizer relief valve sticks open. The emergency diesel generators fail to auto-start on a loss of off-site power. You respond by procedure. You announce, you verify, you act, you fail your first simulator evaluation. The malfunction was a steam generator tube rupture and you identified it 4 minutes late. The instructor writes, delayed diagnosis, slow transition to emergency operating procedures. You go home and read the EOPs until 2 a.m. You come back the next day and run it again. The NRC written exam is 75 questions. The passing score is 80%. The NRC operator licensing exam pass rate across all facilities runs roughly 80%. You pass on your first attempt, score 88%. The operating test is administered by NRC examiners who fly in from the regional office. 2 days of scenarios on the simulator and a walkthrough of the plant. They watch everything. They write everything down. You pass. The license arrives as a laminated card the size of a driver's license. Your name, your facility, your reactor unit. Expiration date, 6 years from issuance, subject to biennial requalification. You hold it for a long time before you put it in your wallet. 11 of the 14 people who started with you made it. You're 26. The control room is quieter than you expected. The panels stretch wall to wall, 50 years of instrumentation layered on top of each other, analog gauges next to digital displays, switches with tags on them from outages that happened before you were born. The hum of the ventilation system is constant. The lighting is low and even. Your base pay is $42.80 an hour. Shift differential, overtime, and outage premiums bring your annual total to $98,000 in year 1 on the license. Your job is to monitor and control the reactor from the control room. You are one of 2 licensed ROs on shift at all times. You do not leave the control room without relief. You do not make an unreviewed safety question without a shift supervisor signature. Every change to plant configuration goes through a process that takes longer than you think it should and exactly as long as it has to. The shift supervisor is a man named Dale who has been licensed for 19 years and has the calm of someone who has responded to actual emergencies and knows that panic costs time. He drinks bad coffee and reads procedure revisions on his break. He tells you on your first week, this plant has run for 40 years without a serious event. Your job is to make it 41. 14 months in, the plant enters an unplanned reactor trip. A sensor malfunction sends a false signal and the reactor shuts itself down automatically, exactly as designed. Alarms sound, indicators shift. The emergency operating procedures activate. You work the board for 4 hours while the shift supervisor coordinates with engineering and the NRC Operations Center, which receives notification of any unplanned shutdown within 1 hour by federal requirement. You don't panic. You work the procedures. The plant is stable in 22 minutes. The event review takes 6 weeks. You learn that the gap between a normal shift and an emergency shift is smaller than it looks from outside. The procedures don't change. The urgency does. You requalify every 2 years. Simulator evaluations, written exams, and an annual physical that checks your vision, your hearing, and a psychological fitness screen. The NRC can pull your license for a failed drug test, a DUI, or a fitness for duty violation. 2 men you know lose their licenses in 4 years. One for alcohol, one for lying on a security form. Their names come off the roster and nobody talks about it. The license is not yours to keep. It's yours to maintain. You're 33. The SRO license requires an additional NRC examination, another simulator operating test, and a minimum of 1 year as a licensed RO. The SRO is the license that lets you supervise the control room. Most shift supervisors hold it. Most training instructors hold it. The plant's senior management pipeline runs almost entirely through it. Your base rate moves to $56.10 an hour. Total annual compensation with shift premium, outage pay, and the plant's defined benefit pension contribution, $134,000. You supervise 2 ROs per shift. You review and approve every temporary configuration change, every tagout, every procedure deviation. You are the on-shift decision maker for anything that happens inside the protected area. When the NRC resident inspector, the agency keeps one permanently assigned to your plant, has a question about a shift log, he comes to you. The outage is where the SRO earns the title. Every 18 months, the reactor shuts down for refueling. The plant runs 24 hours a day on a compressed schedule. 1,200 contractor workers flood the site. Every one of them is badged, briefed, and supervised. You coordinate tagouts for 400 active work orders simultaneously. You sleep 5 hours a night for 3 weeks. weeks. The overtime rate is $84.15 an hour. Your outage check is the largest single paycheck of your life. You are asked to become a training instructor. You spend 2 years teaching licensed candidates in the simulator building, inserting the same malfunctions that were inserted on you. You fail a candidate on a steam generator tube rupture. He identified it 4 minutes late. You write the same words your instructor wrote about you 9 years ago: delayed diagnosis, slow transition to emergency operating procedures. He comes back the next day and runs it again. He passes on the second attempt. You put his name on the roster and go home.
You're 41. The title is Control Room Supervisor or Shift Manager, depending on the facility. The NRC license is the same. The responsibility is different. You are now the senior licensed operator on shift for the entire plant. Both units if the site runs 2. All systems, all personnel in the protected area, all events that occur between the time you sign on and the time you sign off. Total compensation, including base, premium pay, bonus, and benefits, $189,400. You brief the incoming shift at 05:45. You review the overnight logs. You walk the control room. You read the corrective action program entries from the night. There are 14. One is yours from 3 weeks ago. It's been resolved. You close it. The NRC conducts inspections of your facility on a continuous basis. The resident inspector attends your shift turnovers. He sits in on your pre-job briefings. He reads your logs. An inspection finding, a violation, triggers a response process that can run 6 months and costs the company millions. You have had 2 findings in 4 years. Both were minor. Both were yours to answer for. A plant manager position opens. The salary band runs $160,000 to $210,000 plus annual bonus. The plant manager holds overall responsibility for operations, maintenance, engineering, and security. Every senior vice president at the utility above you came through the control room. The pipeline runs one direction, and you are standing in it. You think about Garrett, the NLO who read pump bearings through the floor with his hand. He retired last year at 61. 40 years of shift work. His pension is $4,200 a month. He bought a boat. He sends photos of it occasionally. The water looks flat and warm and very far from a control room. The kid mopping the floor in the reactor building is 19. His badge is blue. He can't go anywhere alone. His dosimeter reads 12 millirem for the month. He doesn't look up when you walk past. You smile at your pay stub anyway. He'll ask someone how to get the license eventually. Whoever he asks will tell him, study. He'll ask how long. They'll say, longer than you think. Both answers will be true and neither one will stop him. The control room chair hasn't moved in 30 years. The console in front of it powers 900,000 homes. The dosimeter on your chest reads 340 millirem for the year, well inside the limit, same as every year before it. The plant has run 41 years without a serious event. Today is day 42 of year 42. You drink bad coffee and read the procedure revision on your break. The plant hums. You listen.